Welcome to A Comic a Day, and this month we are celebrating the birth month of my favorite comic book company, Aftershock Comics. They turned 2 this year, and my god has it been an absolutely brilliant 2 years since. But you'll see what I mean this month. As always, links to buy these comics are in the description, and become a patron to help support the Comic Archivist family of channels. Warning, massive spoilers are massive this month. On with the show. Dreaming Eagles number 2, Sunward I Climb. We begin with the poem High Flight by John McGee, a poem I think everyone at least knows about with the first and last lines. I have slipped the surly bonds of earth, put out my hands and touched the face of God. It's one of my favorite poems, and Reggie uses it to let Lee get a grasp of why we as people want to fly. A mere instinct summed up in a poem of a fighter pilot. However, being able to fly was a hard court press for the black community. See, blacks could qualify as pilots, but not for the Air Force. I mean, there was no squadron to send them to after all. However, in 1940, FDR needed the black vote, so he allowed them to serve in the armed forces, including aviation. Yes, you can literally track every progressive act by the US in needing votes, but many actions did kick down the doors so that the Tuskegee Airmen could get off the ground. Yet even then, those in charge would continue to set up hurdles to make it hard for them to get off the ground. But they would always hop over those hurdles and show just how good they were. And due to the fact that there were people in high places that didn't want to be on the wrong side of history, did smooth things over for them. They were the best and brightest. Then we as an audience start seeing an actual flashback with Reggie and his best friend from the Corps, Fats. Fats was halfway through becoming a doctor before the war came and he became a pilot. But Fats also was a smart character who saw and knew so much. And in official flashback mode, Fats is talking through the shirtwave to Reggie about how the first time they go into combat, it'll be a blow towards progress. So taking a swing at someone calling him Darky, be it on base or off, hinders that. Young Reggie says that he wasn't going to, it just would have been fun is all. Then old Reggie narrates that they had the same rules that the white cadets had, but it was how they were applied to the black candidates that made all the difference. And while Reggie and Fats are going through their paces, they see a couple of their other cadets from their squadron trying to mass themselves in the sun to get the jump on them, but Fats and Reggie do hold out and make a pretty cool show of it. Yes, it works a lot better in the book than I make it sound. Then old Reggie tells them about the base commanders, how the first one was fired for sticking up for a couple black MPs, then Colonel Fred Von Kimball, whose first order was to segregate the base, and then he was replaced by Parrish, who was actually a fair enough man, but they towed the line and kept their heads down, choking down frustration and humiliation no man should ever have to endure. But when they got those wings pinned on them, it all felt worth it. That was the blow that Fats was talking about. Under half of their class did graduate, and most of the time they were always short-handed when it came to blacks graduating, meaning that they flew more combat missions than whites. Of course, he only found out about that later, since they did sign up for combat and just got that. Back to flashback proper, Fats and Reggie land on Farjuna Field, with Reggie making a joke about how all of Africa looks the same, and some white boy field mechanics making a jab at how this must be like them just coming home, right? But it was just noise by that point. At least that's what they tell each other. Lee interrupts to ask if the P-40, the plane Reggie was flying during the war, was the worst they offered at the time. While the British Spitfire was the best, Reggie brings up that the P-40 wasn't the best, but it also wasn't the worst plane either. However, a nice plus is that one of the higher-ups at the field, during a battle strategy meeting, gave them pointers on how to outturn the superior German Messerschmitt. But that superior officer and whatnot were just visitors. Officially, Reggie and his team were bolted to the 33rd, if only because no one knew what to do with them, and the commanding officer of the 33rd really disliked them. But while the 99th, that is their small unit's personal designation, are just talking about how it seems like most everyone dislikes them, Fats is still the voice trying to say that no matter what, if they fail for the future of the black military, and it would prove all these redneck white boys right if they did fail. Either way, they've got their orders, so they have to follow them. Patrols are pretty easy enough for Farjuna Field, with Fats and Reggie able to shoot the breeze since the Germans were all but kicked out of Tunisia by this point. But they'd eventually run into German fighter pilots as they are reassigned to Italy. The problem? The Germans would see them first. It was a surprise attack that they were all flying information for over Italy. They lost 2 of their friends, but the horror of finally having a 109 on his 6, Reggie was scared witless. In that moment, he didn't act cocky or brave or felt like he knew what he was doing. He was acting on pure instinct. Frankly though, it's a scene you really need to read to get the weight of it, but Reggie tells his son that the outline of a front-on Messerschmitt still haunts his dreams some nights, and that is where the issue ends. So again, skipping the racial politics and not getting into repeating how this is a historical fiction framed by a man teaching his son about the harsh truth of his life, this issue really felt fundamentally like a history book, or at least a history-based ramble. Old Reggie narrates the facts like FDR winning the black vote, random facts about the COs on base, and even facts on the P-40, while you have young Reggie's perspective to give more humanity to the events happening. However, there is actually an interesting disconnect because of this. See, we only see some offhanded comments made that aren't literally, we don't like you, darky, or stuff like that, and we primarily hear about how things are going on a race front from basically just them talking, or old Reggie narrating, saying this is how this happened, etc., etc., etc. On one hand, this adds a unique isolationism to Reggie and his team, since they were treated as lepers or leeches just latched on, but on the other hand, it also makes this feel like a pamphlet more than a story. It's not a big negative, but Lee just listening and barely piping up makes us a bit on the iffy side when it comes to a solid narrative. And if you couldn't tell by me trying to sum it up, with how much information is put over, instead of a narrative, a simple plot, there is a bit of jumping around, it feels like. It is still a damn interesting read, but I'm just hoping that something really grabs me for the next issue. So come back tomorrow as Reggie is finally on the front lines against the Germans. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Check out my other 2 channels, Comic Archivist and ComicSins. Become a patron to get to choose the next comics we do for a comic a day. And as always, stay golden, Inklings.
Watch the skyways, or the land and the sea are ready to fly.